Don't touch anything without asking me first.
Yes, sir. Hey, Plankton.
SpongeBob, am I right, fellas? The SpongeBob movies are one of those facets in mainstream pop culture where you're always hearing the same 5 bullet points about them. These being that only the first film is good, Sponge Out of Water is the real best one, Sponge on the Run is an affront to God and man, the Sandy movie is an affront to God and man, and the Plankton movie is actually quite decent. You've got a lot to swallow on your plate. Of course, as a Gen Zer, I grew up and had an enormous SpongeBob phase growing up. Being the one kid who still watched cartoons instead of American football, SpongeBob playing a role in my life is something I feel everyone eventually has mixed feelings over. Another bullet point you see brought up all the time is, of course, the idea that only the first few seasons are good, and all the newer seasons, especially the ones produced after Steven Hillenburg's death, are irredeemable garbage. Though in my eyes, I think as long as the episode in question isn't trying to sell me something, it'll either be boring or decent, or at least that's just my opinion. I've moved past the material need for SquarePants. I'm a guy who listens to Todd Rundgren and watches Werner Herzog movies. I'm a monster. With the recent release of the 4th theatrical SpongeBob movie, The Search for SquarePants, having come out, I figured now might as well be a good time to look back at all of the SpongeBob movies and figure out which ones still hold up and which ones do not, especially in regards to the newer ones. Join us today as we're going to do exactly what I just said. Right now! Now, of course, I own all the SpongeBob movies on physical media, as well as multiple copies of them all. Here's my DVD of the first movie, which is notable for being the version that comes with the very rare promotional bonus disc. This disc is simply just home to the music video for the Flaming Lips contribution to the film's soundtrack, and a making-of documentary of said music video. The disc nowadays is also worthless, as these 2 bonus features later wound up on the film's Blu-ray release. Now, like many of the greats I'm sure I probably have in the audience, I have all of these SpongeBob movies, plus an out-of-sync copy of the entirety of Season 6 on my computer, so we'll just watch them this way, and let's begin. Of course, as per usual, we start off with the classic live-action, over-the-top Pirates of the Caribbean parody opening, where it seems that maybe you walked into the wrong movie, but once the captain of the pirate ship opens the treasure chest and proclaims, "Tickets to the SpongeBob movie!" it firmly gets a strong chuckle out of you, the viewer, and getting you amped up. The pirates then sing a grandiose orchestral version of the SpongeBob theme song, referencing the theme's origins in sea shanties and firmly establishing the song as a 21st century musical icon, before docking on this mysterious cinema in the middle of nowhere. I get it's nonsensical, but who builds a theater just for sea purposes? Anyways, the pirates storm the inside and make a scene, and I've always wondered what these candies they have on sale are. Jujubes? We got them once as a gift from my grandma. I never had them, but I don't think they're as appealing to me as they might have been to kids in the 60s and 70s. Red raspberry dollars honestly sounds quite nice, but it strikes me as being an acquired taste akin to the black licorice flavoring of Good and Plenty. Anyways, the camera pans leftwards and— Wait a minute! What's this? The Innermost Limits of Pure Fun? Filmed and edited by George Greeno? Okay, change of plans!
The kind to judge a book by its cover, you'll never discover the sleight of hand behind the magic gland. Illusions, the things we overlook. If you're inclined to fall for that old hocus pocus, forget it and focus beyond that casual glance. Pay a little closer attention to detail. All the things you're taking for granted are just as important as what you see. Think about mysterious worlds you can unveil. Ain't it a kick that there's always a trick?
Others like to ride a short belly board and get a short ride. Still others like a short belly board and a long ride, like George Greeno at Santa Barbara, California.
This is George Greeno, a surfer and documentary filmmaker. Greeno, alongside fellow surfer Bob McTavish, are considered pioneers in the world of surfboard technology, patenting the shortboard and the modern-day surfing fin. In the 60s and 70s, he had a stint as a documentary curator, and his work has been used in advertising such as a series of Coca-Cola commercials, among other things we will get into later. Greeno is considered a legend in the context of the surf film. What's a surf film? Are you stupid? The surf film is split into 3 distinct categories. The one I'd imagine most of you are thinking of when you hear it are narrative features about surfing and other decidedly beach-related situations. Examples in this category include Beach Blanket Bingo, Spring Break, and Teen Beach Movie. The second category are narrative films strictly about the sport of surfing, with notable films being Surf 2, Surf Nazis Must Die, Surf's Up 2, Wave Mania, and Local Boys. The third category are documentary features that concentrate strictly on capturing every element of the sport that is considered unique. The most well-known example of this is Bruce Brown's 1965 opus, The Endless Summer, where Brown narrates over 16mm footage shot across the southern and northern hemispheres of people around the world surfing. It might not sound like much in the eyes of an average moviegoer, but it is considered a landmark film in the history of the documentary, even getting preserved in the Library of Congress in 2002. 5 years later, in 1970, George Greeno released The Innermost Limits of Pure Fun to positive reception, but in the modern day, it's a very, very, very niche film. It's also been overshadowed by his later film, Crystal Voyager, and the film isn't easy to find. Thankfully, I spent $20 to get the DVD, and now we can watch the film for ourselves. The first thing about my copy, you'll notice that the credits are cut off. This isn't a mastering mistake, but instead a creative choice. The DVD's liner notes start with a message from Greeno himself, where he says simply, "It is 16:9 now," which is a widescreen format. In The Coming of the Dawn, I had the telesign operator frame it so the field of view of the lens touched the sides of the frame. Going to 16:9, you lose the top and bottom of a 3x4 frame. I wanted to keep as much vertical image as possible. Basically, whoever it is to blame, I would assume either Ted Spencer or whoever it was at the Surf Video Network, wanted the film to come off as more cinematic when viewing it at home. This disc was manufactured in 2007. Widescreen TVs were the latest trend, going hand in hand with their recession the following year, so it makes sense. Now, if you expected me to give ILOPF, as the DVD file abbreviates it, a detailed plot summary, you'd be wrong. The film doesn't have a plot. It's the kind of film that takes the document part of documentary very seriously. This is more than just a basic documentary. It's a way of making a documentary come off as not only a way to show the world what you can do with a camera and a surfboard, it's also a very artistic film. Unlike The Endless Summer, Innermost Limits has no narration, only music, allowing you to just look at amazement at the screen. This is a really unique way of playing with senses in film. I feel like nobody ever really attempts to make silent films in this way anymore. Could it be that people are against it? Maybe. Filmmaker Anders Weber claimed that his ultimately unreleased 2020 finale film, Ambiance, was meant to be a protest against the recreation of silent films. I want to say that he meant this in the context of remaking classic films in modern style, but for brevity, we're going to assume he meant remaking silent films as new silent films. Well, what even was Ambiance about beyond two guys at the beach? Anyways, Innermost Limits is split across either 3 or 4 acts, depending on what you want to take these title cards for. The first and third acts are set in Australia, and in chronicle order, feature the likenesses of Bob McTavish, Gary Keys, Chris Brock, Russell Hughes, and Greeno himself. There's probably other people I forgot to include in there, but I'm not going back in there to get the rest of it. You can tell when he's out there surfing, when all the footage just turns into waves and water splashing all over the camera lens. The film isn't just a collection of people catching waves. There's also plenty of driving shots and Greeno and co getting into mischief interspersed with the surfing. The first instance is everyone taking turns destroying the living hell out of a surfboard, setting it on fire and having a good time. It's also set to a psychedelic choir piece, with the only instruments being an acoustic guitar and a cowbell, which I am assuming is meant to be a juxtaposition. The driving shots have some great focal range, and the tracking is honestly really professional for what I'm guessing is a film produced on a shoestring budget. Also, I gotta say, I dig this establishing shot of the Aussie beach. It's so lively and colorful. The next surfing detour we get is Greeno getting aboard a plane and filming out the window. It's really amazing what this film manages to accomplish using natural lighting and amateur video equipment. If you need me to compare the style of Innermost Limits, I think of it as being a modernized extension of the City Symphony style of documentaries. The City Symphony subgenre has its roots in the 1927 documentary Berlin Symphony of a Great City, which is basically an excuse for the viewer to spend an hour watching the great city and nothing else, kinda like this film. It wouldn't be until the 1929 Ukrainian film Man with a Movie Camera that the subgenre really began to find its footing. The movie plays with speed, some scenes are played faster than others to communicate feelings, scenes are edited on top of each other using primitive filters to make things come off as abstract, and of course the iconic use of multi-negative layering to create abnormal visuals, such as the giant cameraman filming everyone down below from the top of a giant building. Innermost Limits also has a few moments I would describe as being similar to City Symphony film's usual hiccups. A lot of the name cards are jankily edited using a really fast cross dissolve, making the cards last about a second each. Plenty of shots have shaky camera, which to most of you must instill fear, but to me, I think it helps make the film feel very human. Surfing isn't necessarily an extreme sport by any means, but it's one of those things where half the fun comes from the experience, the thrill of being in the moment. So to me, a lot of the more amateurly photographed moments harken back to those emotions, and it works out great. For stuff that's unapologetically City Symphony style, I'm gonna give the award to this slow motion scene of Greeno throwing cats towards the shaking camera, depicted from a low angle perspective. There's also even a scene in the film where you get to see Greeno editing the actual film strip using a clamp and the works, and I find that really cool. The best looking and non-surf scenes, in my opinion, are these shots I refer to as length out shots, as the edges of the camera are visible. Take these driving shots, for example, with how they have a very unstable and jerky mounting to the car. These allow for a more stable picture. The more jank footage we get gives the film a very personal cadence. And I really dig the film's use of natural lighting a lot. Not only does it reinforce that overproduced home movie vibe one can strive for, it actually allows you to get a wide range of details, like the rust of the ship they go on, or the scene of digging up sand and rocks, the scene of Greeno and friends cooking grits on a campfire, and the rest of the dinner scene. They all feel real, as if I'm looking through a window of this guy's life set to a kickin' rock star. We're gonna talk about that next. The last big thing the film has to offer, of course, is indeed the final 10 minutes, dubbed The Coming of the Dawn. Set to the title piece of music, on the surface level it may just look like a bunch of unrelated shots of surfing and catching waves from Greeno's perspective, but that's because I'm only giving you a small portion of the film to look at. When you're watching this at 2 times speed with the volume off, then yes, that's exactly what it is. But when you watch it with the volume, you get the music, and that's what sells this for me. With the musical arrangements like the electric guitars, synth, and organ emphasizing the psychedelic mood to the scene, it allows for one to be disconnected from reality and make the waves come off as unreal and otherworldly. And with how often the camera gets splashed of water or submerged completely, it really does make for a great watch. That's the film on the side that faces the audience. Now for all the behind-the-scenes fun, beginning with the music. The score of The Innermost Limits of Pure Fun was composed by a psychedelic rock band known simply as The Farm, not to be confused with the 1983 group of the same name. The soundtrack was the band's only project, and about 13 of the, I'm estimating to be 20 compositions the group composed, are included on the film's official soundtrack release. So whenever the film switches from CD quality rips of the music to whatever is on the film strip directly, it can sound a bit wonky, but still really good. I like this laughing sax solo that plays when they return to Australia. The main main genres of the film's soundtrack are the more obvious surf rock sound combined with psychedelic rock, with traces of folk influence. This is most seen whenever we see any kind of acoustic guitars present in a song, with 3 entire songs we're about to get into being acoustic guitar solos, as well as the 2 songs with lyrics. The opening theme, Crystal Shingles, is an early synth track that definitely gets the crystal portion of the title across. Animal, the first song we hear in full when we get some surf action going on, is probably what most of you would think of when the genre of surf rock comes up. However, it does take on psychedelic recording techniques, especially when it comes to how synthesizers are used during the main bridges. The guitar solo in the song is also a highlight. I just love it when I can listen to an instrument and personify it with a specific emotion. As long as I can vocalize the composition, I'm set for life. Of compositions in here that I can't recognize by name, and that's because these are the songs that got cut from the official soundtrack release. Going off of the album order, Wind and Sea is a straightforward psych track that I describe it from a compositional standpoint as containing a lot of influence from Vince Guaraldi, the composer of a lot of the early Peanuts specials. There's something about the piano chimes that reminds me a lot of the melody of Lucy and Linus. The first of the 2 lyrical tracks is one of my favorite tracks, Crumple Car. What makes Crumple Car stick out is how it ties into the legacy of the farm personnel. The lead vocals and lyrics for Crumple Car were done by a young Daryl Dragon, who led the group alongside his brothers Dennis and Doug. In the mid-1970s, Daryl became a household name thanks to becoming part of the husband and wife soft rock duo Captain and Tennille. I really like the lyrics to Crumple Car, essentially a description of a junk car and the narrator's attachment to the vehicle, with loose connections to surfing. Or Major. I never said I was amazing at analyzing lyrics, you know.
Up on a finger reef she lay, up on the beach in the little bay, the crumpled car, she's there to stay. High tides come, circle her, leaving red rust for her fur, she's not alone. Ocean Kingdom calls her home, the crumpled car.
Toby's Oath is a very brief 80-second acoustic guitar solo. I'm sorry, did you expect anything more from that? For those looking for a more iconic sounding surf rock song, San Jose is exactly what you're looking for. Very noisy, abrasive, fun to listen to, and totally a head swing. It's only fitting that it's followed up with Snake Charmer, a very psychedelic piece that plays into avant-garde instrumentation a lot. This song plays notably during the scene of Greeno and Co. destroying the surfboard and setting it on fire, and it makes for an hilarious contrast in my opinion. The Eater, played during a driving sequence, is the second of the vocal tracks on the soundtrack. This song is more deliberately about driving a car, and again is a solo acoustic recording. Definitely the weaker of the 2, and its incredibly short length does not do it any favors. Back onto general old-school surf rock, The Cruiser is another goodie I dig. I honestly can't say a lot about the songs on their own. They're all great to listen to on their own, but in my opinion, getting to hear them within the context of the film really gives them that extra oomph that, as the kids put it, that really lets them stand out. We'll talk about the rest of the soundtrack later. For now, let's get back onto the main man Greeno himself. After the film's cult success, Greeno helped in film produce several more surf films, his most recent endeavor being 2003's Dolphin Glide, with more notable contributions including 1977's The Last Wave, and various amounts of working as a cinematographer for surf sequences and narrative features that I'd imagine are as rarely seen as Innermost Limits. For his other film works, I managed to snag and watch his 1973 direct follow-up film Crystal Voyager for this video. With Crystal Voyager, Greeno still maintains an active presence, being the lead star, writer, and cameraman, but the director's chair is now filled by David Elphick. This film's structure differs from Innermost Limits in regards to being a more personal look and semi-autobiography of Greeno himself, featuring him narrating the film and giving us a look into his sailing hobby.
I built a retractable keel on the boat, along with a telescoping rudder so I could go up in shallow water with it. The boat drawing only 2 3/4 feet with the keel retracted. I can also set the keel any depth I want to enhance the sailing capability. But the main advantage of the retractable keel is being able to sail up rivers and over shallow reefs, and making it easy to beach the boat in remote areas.
It's definitely a more professionally sound film, lacking the amateur charm of Innermost Limits, which I chalk up to the film being financed by both the Australian Film Development Corporation and the United States Travel Agency. A lot of the film's editing is definitely more comparable to a music video rather than a home movie this time around. Thankfully, all is forgiven with the film's closing sequence, a full 23 minutes of pure wave footage set to the entirety of Pink Floyd's Echoes. The story of Pink Floyd's involvement in the film typically goes that Echoes was used without permission. When the band discovered this, they looked at the footage and came up with a compromise. Greeno would be allowed to retain the use of Echoes as long as the band received permission to use the sequence as a backdrop whenever Echoes was played at a Pink Floyd concert. As such, the sequence is essentially considered the song's official music video. And I'm gonna be honest with you, as someone who thinks metal is overrated, this sequence is fucking goated. The combination of the song going hand in hand with the visuals reinforces that feeling of being in the moment, and with the more experimental sound of the music, gives the waves that otherworldly edge on a level greater than or equal to the coming of the dawn. It allows the sequence to serve as a reminder that the ocean, no matter how often we take it for granted and how much we try to explore it and research it, it's still an enigma. The non-ocean bits remind me a lot of the photographs of William Eggleston, somebody I know none of you are aware of. Basically, he was the first mainstream photographer to use color photos for non-commercial purposes. Yes, kids, even though we had color pictures during this time, nobody ever thought of using them for taking selfies. Specifically when it comes to the colors, contrast, and natural lighting present in the film. With how janky, jerky, and up close the camera work can be at times, it reminds me a lot of Eggleston's work, and honestly might be one of the few films to ever dare attempt to nail such an aesthetic in motion picture format. And this was before Eggleston started taking his pictures. This I pinpoint to Greeno's drive when making the film. Most of, if not all of the surfing scenes where it's him catching waves were accomplished by him strapping a 28-ton camera to his shoulder. Remember, this was the late 60s. Anyone with a GoPro can easily do this shit with the same amount of ease needed to shoe shine aglets for the ball. But back then, you would have been called a madman for bringing your camera to the beach and using it like this! And that's another thing I feel helps make this film more personal. We're looking into a window of somebody's life, and using this window to understand how this person sees life and how it differs from our own perception of reality. Overall, both of these films are really amazing, and I think you should check them out. Innermost Limits gets a 7.4 out of 10, though that might get bumped in the future, but will be retained as my rating for the soundtrack, while Crystal Voyager gets a strong 8 out of 10, also carried over to the soundtrack album. No reason, just felt like it, Pink Floyd bias aside. And if anyone's curious, here's a ranking of the track list for the soundtracks of both films. Also, both albums are in the most recent editions of my Topsters. So now that we've gotten all of that stuff out of the way, there's still one question left we have to answer. How strongly would I recommend both of these films to you specifically? Strongly! Very much. These are definitely an acquired taste. You need to have at least some prior experience with City Symphony style movies, at least in my opinion, to get the most value of these. I would definitely say that these could probably bore you if you're really only into like the modern movies and not really anything from before the 70s. It's definitely a very niche film, I'm gonna say. But it's a really good one. I really think you should check it out. Same goes for Crystal Voyager. I would say if you're looking for something that's more akin to a normal documentary, Crystal Voyager, which I sadly don't have a copy of physically, it's very expensive to get that one. I would recommend that you start with that one. And if you like that one, then do this one. But now comes for the reason why you clicked on this video in the first place. How exactly does this thing directly tie back and correlate into this thing? Tying Greeno's work back into SpongeBob is more so identifying the series' influences beyond classic animation. In the case of direct examples, the season 6 episode SpongeBob vs. the Big One features a vocal cameo from Bruce Brown, the director and creator of The Endless Summer. It's definitely in that same camp, I would say, where it's more or less an homage and tribute to that film specifically. And it makes sense to include him given that the episode was entirely themed around surfing, also Johnny Depp.
I was born to do this.
When we're talking directly about Greeno itself, I would argue it's probably the credits to the first SpongeBob movie where that influence really shows. I'm not really sure if it was ever the intention for it to be an homage. In fact, the footage of the waves that you see in the credits of the SpongeBob movie weren't even filmed by Greeno himself. It actually were the product of another surf filmmaker. It was actually shot by fellow surf filmmaker Jack McCoy, who primarily made a lot of his own surf footage available to use as stock footage that you can even purchase for use off of his website. He's also made a couple of surf films of himself, these ones I haven't seen yet. These ones being 1976's In Search of Tubular Swells, 1992's The Green Iguana, and he even collaborated with Bruce Brown for The Endless Summer 2 in 1994. And when you actually look at the credits of the first SpongeBob movie, you will find Greeno's name listed in the special thanks credits. It could just be in reference to getting permission to use the movie's poster, but I'd imagine even if that poster never even showed up, he probably still would have been featured in the credits anyways. And it's kind of crazy that the SpongeBob Wiki makes zero references to the inclusion of this film in the poster. Obviously, and I don't need a full page dedicated to the movie on here. It's complete. Obviously, that would be going off topic. But at least included in, like, the trivia section. Even the IMDb page for the film doesn't make any references. And the same goes for any other corner of the internet that has been infected by the Bob virus. Maybe in the future we could see this influence pop up again. It could inspire the title of a future episode. Maybe we could get Greeno to guest star, but that's too much of a pipe dream. Just anything really in the new seasons of the show, I would be down for it, but it's entirely dependent on whatever the crew's feeling like. And with that, that's gonna do it for this issue of the show. Join me next time where once again we'll talk about something that is not connected to something that is either popular or well known. It's just my brand.